Hello and welcome to episode 124 of the Boot Nerds podcast. JayMike, what's going on?
I think it's pretty good in Denmark, my friend. Just hydrating a little bit, getting ready for yet another Boot Nerds podcast episode. Highlight of the week, of course. Mm-hmm. I understand if it's not to you, but I mean, we get to talk boots. We're hanging out as friends. It's awesome. How are things in Canada? Getting colder?
Things are great. It's cooled off a little bit, but we still have no snow anytime soon that I can see. But who knows? That could change tomorrow. They are predicting that we're going to have way more snow this winter than we've had in the last couple, which is not good. I'm not looking forward to that.
No, you've had quite a lot of snow.
We've not really. It's actually been not too bad, all things considered, but apparently it's going to be bad this year. But I'm kind of nervous to talk about what we're talking about today because I'm looking at my list here and I think there's going to be a lot of long-time Predator fans that might be a little upset with me.
And if you haven't seen on the title already, today we are discussing what we think are the top 5 best Predator boots ever made. Now, if you do end up having any comments or questions for the episode that we'll answer next time, well, leave them in the comment section right down below. And also, if you think that this idea or our lists are awesome, leave us a thumbs up. We'll greatly appreciate that. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the Boot Nerds podcast yet, go and do that. But Josh.
Also, one last thing, Jay. We are sharing our very personal top 5 lists.
Oh, yes.
I would really appreciate it if you could share yours as well. And everybody else can get angry at you as they're about to get angry at us.
So basically, you're secretly hoping, I guess, that my list is worse and more controversial than yours.
I am hoping that, but I, for some reason, just doubt that's the case because I feel like I always have weirder picks than you.
Yeah, you kind of do. That's because you know, good taste, bad. Anyways, just before we get started with the list, also, just so people understand why we're choosing as we are, other than the fact that we have absolutely ridiculously bad taste, one of us at least, and not me, but the criteria for going on the list is a combination. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. Is a combination of wearability and significance as a Predator. So it's kind of the what we like more, but also what we think is like important Predators. Agree?
Yes, because I think most people would say, oh, top 5 Predators, and they just go for pure nostalgia. Yeah. And if it was based on looks, my list would be very different than what I'm picking. But I'm picking based on a little bit of nostalgia, but I think wearability, significance of that boot at the time, and really what makes it different, not just from other boots available at that time, but if you compare it to anything else today, these are kind of boots that stand out and I think are still very wearable.
Look, if we don't yap people's ears off with the list and it's actually kind of quick, I think we could also go over the 5 best looking Preds ever. But let's see.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let's jump into the list and we're going to do it in reverse order. So, Josh, you're number 5.
Number 5. My number 5 is the Predator LZ2, which is a very unusual pick. I think... This was my reasoning here. I thought about putting the current Predator kind of concept on this list, and it would be the Predator 20, specifically the 20.1 low, I think is probably the one you would pick because it was the first one to do it. The Freak .1 low is also really good, but it's effectively a slight evolution of what was originally done with the Pred 20. But then I think if we're talking about boots that offer a ton of additional grip on the ball, I look at the Predator LZ as the first to do it with its hybrid touch, and I think that was a really solid football boot. And then with the LZ2, they basically refined the concept. I think it fit a little bit better. You got that same all-over grip sensation. The hybrid touch upper, I think, is one of the best synthetics that any brand has ever produced, and it's a much lighter base than what you have from the current Predator, making it overall a much lighter product. For me, I really like the elements on the Predator Instinct, but I think the outsole was such a letdown that it has to be the LZ2. So for the modern Predator concept, I think the best of the bunch is that one right there. And a boot that I really, really enjoyed wearing.
I would tend to agree with you, actually. The reason I actually have it in my hands is because I was so close to putting it on my list as number 5. I agree with everything you said. It's a great boot. And I also prefer this over the Instinct. I think the Instinct kind of feels like the LZ3. To me, that's just the way it is. You know, the elements are more or less the same, slightly different. But this is what I think. I don't think it's unfair to say. Correct me if you disagree, but this is Adidas's CTR 360 Maestro 3.
I think so, yeah.
It's one of those boots that you can really come back to, enjoy, synthetic leather upper. It doesn't necessarily resonate with that traditional Predator DNA, but I also don't mind the whole control boot aspect of things. It's a great boot, but I couldn't put it on the list because I had to have the accelerators in there. Now, in terms of wearability, these are not up there, but it's just such an important football boot for what it did. And the remakes have shown that the Orca is, wow, that is a difficult language, this English thing. The upper is bulky, but still playable today with the right tooling. So for me, accelerators over LSETs.
I think that's fair and probably the more normal pick. I look at those two boots and I feel like the accelerator has aged much more poorly where the LD2 is a very wearable boot.
It's also 15 years older. Let's remember that.
Yeah, it's a much older football boot.
So
I do also want to clarify my pick, Jay, real quick, because I think we recently talked about
people
SL
already
models.
Raging in the comments.
It was on SL models. We talked about it. Maybe it was even in the last episode. And I mentioned one of my all-time favorite boots is the Instinct Crazy Light. I chose not to put that on my list because I could put it on my list. But just because it was a limited release, one colorway, it wasn't really readily available to people. So I think when you're talking about the concept, it has to be LZ2 for me.
Yeah, but if you're normal, it's... I'm kidding. I think LZ2 is very... it's a very fair point. And, you know, what do I choose if I go out to play today? Accelerators are these? Well, it's the LZ too, obviously. Anyways, number 4, let me go first then, because I have actually chosen the Predator Freak 1.1 lows. And I've done so, and it's slightly controversial because, and people will probably claim, recency bias and all that stuff, and that might be the case, but I genuinely think that after a couple of years with especially the Pred 18 and 19s, we're back on track with this. It's an insanely wearable boot. It's an enjoyable boot to wear. Very comfortable, and it's really, you know, taken the Predator concept, the Predator DNA into 2021. And it's something that, you know, out of all the Predator boots that I have on my table, if I go out to play a match tomorrow, it's probably this one or my number 1 that I'm choosing to wear. Because it just has, you know, it's just such a good football boot. And for me, yeah, it's, you know, it's knit and all that stuff, but I think it does the Predator name and the DNA justice. So I think it needs to be on the list. It's not a groundbreaking boot because it continues what the Mutator did, but it's probably the best modern Predator for me.
And I think that's a fair statement to make.
Thank you.
Even though I disagree.
Okay.
Number 4, I have a boot that you probably have much higher on your list, maybe even 1 if I'm guessing, because we don't know each other's list. We should have disclosed that before we started this podcast. I have the Addy Power, and I put the Addy Power at number 4 because I think it was the best of the original deviation that Adidas decided to make with the Predator series, with eliminating the fold-over flap tongue and kind of changing the formula without getting rid of the leather. I think the Addy Power is one of those football boots that, again, would fare very well if it came out as a new boot right now, despite being 10 years old now, which is so hard to believe that that's now a 10-year-old football boot. But I think visually it looks the part. It was such a redemption for the Adidas brand after the
after the
Predator X, right? Which was just like, let's change the concept and just completely ruin the Predator series. And I think the Addy Power took all of those same elements, but it did so in a way that was much more attractive to a lot of people. And again, the Addy Power kind of goes down as this unsung hero in the modern Predator era.
Yeah, we need to change that. So number 4, okay, I had probably expected better from you, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Now, fair enough. And can we just be honest here and say that we think, both of us, that the Predator X is probably the worst Predator ever made?
I can't agree with you there. I kind of like it, and I always kind of have. It actually seems to fit me pretty well, and I like the solid. Like for me, I look at an accelerator and I'm like, oh, that's a cool football boot. I would be happy to wear it for the most part, but I think I would rather wear a Predator X. I think it does the bulky, chunky feel a little bit better for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you also like the T90 lasers and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It is a very T90 lasery boot, just without all the, grippy jazz. It's just that, just a tank. It's just a tank. I never liked it. Anyways, Josh, number 3. What do you got for me?
Number 3, I have the Predator Absolute. And this is a little bit of nostalgia because I had a couple pairs of Absolutes. I think they are built extremely well. I think it's such a comfortable football boot. I think it's the right balance of classic Predator, but also not going too overboard. I think it's such a wearable product by today's standards. It's incredibly comfortable. I think it looks the part. It's one of those Predator models where I don't see what you can realistically be mad at. And I actually really liked, I view it as kind of a gimmicky thing today, but back when it was original, and even now, I find it interesting that I can play around with the weights and the insole. I think it's cool to have the option of this weighted element under your foot or the option to not have it at all. I like the adjustability factor of the Absolute.
Okay, that was a genuine surprise for me that you have that on the list, especially after, I do remember them back in the day. Back then I remember thinking that the Absolutes were definitely better than the Pulses. But after trying them again, the remakes here, I definitely enjoy the Pulses more. The remakes, at least. But fair enough. My number 3 has, and I don't have the original with me here, so I'm going to go with the remakes, but the Predator Mania. And obviously, the Mania has to be on the list. And it's slightly controversial that it's down here, but that's because it's an old football boot. And when we're talking wearability, what would I pick up and wear tomorrow? I do feel that it has some, it's just bulkier and less streamlined, which I prefer. And I have to be true to, what I would wear tomorrow. So with that said, probably the most iconic Predator ever. That or the Absolute. What do you say? Not the Absolute, the Accelerator. Absolute joke. But I think to most people, the Mania is slightly more iconic than the Accelerators, right?
For sure.
And I think the remakes show that it's a concept that works really well, and on a modern tooling, it's actually a really wearable football boot still. But for me, there's a little bit of lack of lockdown and all that jazz that I want in a modern football boot. So that's why it's number 3.
Okay. All right.
So now people can commence to
Yeah, people are definitely going to be upset about a Mania at the 3 spot.
Yeah.
So what do you have as better than the Mania, which probably shouldn't be at number 3?
Wow, shots fired. Okay, I deserve that. I have taken, and I'm very interested in hearing what you say here. I have taken the Predator Power Swerve, which I think is one of those boots that constantly gets overlooked. You mentioned the Addy Power as an unsung hero, but to me, the Power Swerve is. It's kind of taking things back. That was the boot that really took the Predator into, like, say, the modern pre-LSET era, like the modern era of the last real Predators, right?
Sure.
Because I never really back then enjoyed the Pulses or the Absolutes that much, and I felt that these kind of just perfected all that. They felt modern, they felt sleeker, they had Predator elements, and to this day, I just enjoy wearing them. A little bit more comfortable for me, not as chunky and tank-like. There's actually some nimbleness to them, if that's a word, and they still feel like Preds. So to me, it's a Pred that I would actually like to wear over the years.
I agree with you. I think having it at the 2 spot is really fair. I was between Power Swerve and Absolute for my pick at the 3 spot. I just went with Absolute because I think it had more of a nostalgia factor for me. But yeah, the Power Swerve, it's everything the Absolute did, but arguably that little bit better. I think the Predator element is certainly more aggressive. Obviously, the tungsten powder that you could have at the bottom of your foot shifting was a pretty cool little detail. And in general, it's a really refined take on the original Predator concept before they decided to change everything. So Power Swerve, I think for a lot of people is going to be pretty high on the list. But for me, at number 2, a boot you mentioned you didn't really care for, but recently got a remake, was the Predator Pulse. And for me, I think the Predator Pulse, I feel like I've been saying this for a little while now, it's always been an underrated Predator model. Visually, for me, I think it's one of the greatest looking Preds of all time, and I realize that shouldn't have a lot to do with what I'm picking here, but I love the feel of that boot. I think it has one of the best rubber Predator elements that we've ever had on a Predator model, and I think that was a very ahead of its time product, which I think when you get this new Predator Pulse remake on your feet, I think you realize, oh my gosh, this still fits really well. It still feels really good. Yes, it's bulkier than what we're used to by modern 2021 football boot standards. But I think when you're talking about that original Predator concept, man, I love the Pulse. It's one of my favorites.
Okay, so statement here, hot take. This, alongside the Mania remake, is the most playable Predator remake that we've had so far in 2021. I think.
For sure. I think the Absolute gets a shout as well. I think that was a very
I didn't like that. One. I thought it was too chunky.
Really?
There was too much volume in the forefoot, and it was just like, I was just, made my foot feel like a brick, and I don't need that because technique's rubbish enough as it is. I don't need my boots weighing me down, right?
And I'll agree with you because I have an original Pulse in the same size, and having them side by side with this remake, it was pretty shocking how similar they actually felt on feet. So I thought that was really interesting. And again, it just proved to me what I thought, which very often, we've talked about this on the podcast as well, you have these fond memories of these old football boots and you haven't had them on your feet in 12, 15 years, and you finally try them on, you're like, wow, this is...
realize they're not as good anymore.
Yeah, not so great. But I think that's a football boot that I put on and I was pleasantly surprised.
Right. Okay. Well, fair enough. Again, I'm surprised in that pick, but I can totally live with it. Okay. Before we reveal our number ones, guys, just remember to post your own top 5 Predator boots ever in the comment section right down below. You probably completely disagree with us, and that's fair. But it's also, I mean, Predators are about, it's a lot about feelings as well, right? You probably grew up seeing and wearing the Preds, so I feel it's also a lot connected to what you wore and what you really enjoyed. As you will see with my number one as well, because as you've probably guessed, and if you ever listened to the Boot Nerds podcast, I don't think it's been a secret that my favorite Predator ever is the Predator Addy Power, or the Addy Power Predator, as it was actually called, which was... stupid. And it's it's a boot that on paper I shouldn't like, or I should be a little bit just, skeptical of. And I was in the beginning, but I've just, every time I've gone back to it, I realize how awesome of a football boot it is. So you get, first of all, a fantastic tooling. It just works. You have these Predator elements which don't add as much grip as you would probably associate with the Predator, but then you have this, and it's calf leather. It's not even kangaroo leather, but it's calf leather. It doesn't matter because it's soft enough, and the shape they've used for the boot, the way it wraps your foot, the heel is absolutely phenomenal. So I feel elegant as a leather boot would give me. I feel like I have that little bit of, oomph, power in my shot. It's light, and it is just such a good all-rounder that I think hasn't gotten nowhere near enough recognition over the years. And this needs to be remade ASAP, Adidas. And again, I realize people are gonna ridicule me for this, but out of all the Preds that have ever been released, this is, triple black Addy power. I'll take 10. I don't care. I'll take 10.
Yeah, I think the Addy Power is the best example of Adidas trying to modernize the Predator by taking down the bulk and the weight as much as possible without ruining the original recipe. And I think everyone would have loved to have seen kangaroo leather. I think that would have been amazing. Much better without really adding any significant weight, but they did it in a cheaper way. At least that's what I would imagine the decision was made on. But the only problem I have with them remaking the Addy Power is if they're using any of the modern Predator tooling, it's not going to weigh as little as the original did, which is a bit of a shame. I think that sole plate and stud pattern needs to go down as one of the greatest ever achievements from the Adidas brand. And Addy Power came out in 2011? No, 2011. So it was... That sole plate was really overshadowed, I think, by the hype around the F50 Addy Zero line and the sprint frame that was available, right? So I think
that was great.
Again, kind of an underappreciated Predator model when you look back on everything that Adidas did. And again, I think it's the reputation of the Predator, unfortunately, took such a hit from the Predator X, but what a follow-up the Addy Power was.
Exactly. And they needed to do something drastically different, and they did, to be fair to them. So, Josh, you're number one. Let me take a guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Mania.
Yes. So, Predator Mania, again, kind of a little bit of a nostalgia factor for me in that it was my first ever pair of top-end football boots. Visually, I know this is not a list about looks, but it is, to me, one of the most aesthetically pleasing football boots of all time, let alone the best-looking Predator. I think that's one of the best Predator elements we ever got on a Pred model. And again, I think when you think about classic Predator, that is the ultimate in terms of what the formula needs to be with the leather, the rubber striking element, the fold-over flap tongue, the bladed studs. I love the way that boot fits, feels, looks, everything about it. It's as close to perfect as I think Adidas ever achieved in a pair of football boots. And again, I think some of the remakes have proved that this is a football boot that has actually aged quite well, all things considered, despite being so different from everything that's currently available. So for me, if I was picking one Predator to wear right now, whether it's a remake or an OG, I'd be picking a Predator Mania.
Or you take the OG? Because I thought that was so bulky, man.
No, I'd have an OG. I'd have an OG. Yeah, I don't mind that.
I guess you like it. You like it bulky. Fair enough. Look, I can't be mad at that decision. It's I don't agree, but fair play. I think a lot of people will. It's a little bit of salvation for you. People have been mad, but now everyone's like, okay, let's calm down. He's actually
I have a much less controversial one pick than you do.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Josh. Quickly here. 3 best looking Predators ever. 2 goals over drinks and go.
Number 1, Mania.
Okay.
Number 2, Pulse. Number 3, yep, I love the look of the Pulse. I'm not ashamed of that. Number 3, I would go. I love the Accelerator. I think it's a cool looking boot. Number 4, I'm gonna go
top 3. But you can
top
continue.
3. Okay, I'm good there. I'm happy with that.
I will go 3 will probably be that's a tough one. I think the black, white, red Power Swerve looks absolutely amazing. Dimitar Berbatov. That's class, personified. 2, Predator Mania Japan Blues. Doesn't get much better than that, except for the OG Accelerator. I think these big wavy stripes, you cannot top that. It's impossible to top that. It's one of the most iconic, best looking football boot designs ever. Full stop.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna hear any points against that. Full stop.
All right, let me get more specific on my list because I didn't realize we were picking colorways. I'm gonna go Japan Blue Mania number 1.
Sure.
I'm gonna do the Silver Dragon David Beckham Predator Pulse number 2.
Yeah,
love that
very
boot.
good. Fair enough.
I love that boot. And then Accelerator, I love the highlighter yellow one.
Really?
I think that's a football boot. Like, I'm not into the flashy football boots, but I think that's one that was so shocking at that point in time. It was so unlike anything else. Like, it's such an anomaly in football boot history. If you look at what came out at that time, such a cool product.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
I
Guys,
love that.
let us know what you think. Your top 5 Predators at least. You can also do the top 3 best looking Preds in the comment section right down below. Josh, now it is time for some questions. We might actually even do pretty good time today. That is impressive. So we got one here from Dominic Mercury. Hi guys, a question for the next episode. I have just worn X Ghost 2.1 for the last season. Would you recommend Speedflow or Mercurial? Love the podcast from Australia, all the way from down under. That's pretty wicked, Dom. Look, if you and Josh, you can just jump in if you disagree here. But if you've worn the X Ghost 2.1 and you liked it, I would say just go to the Speedflow, because in my opinion, it's more of the same but better, softer, and it still has that X factor in the Carbitex tool. And Mercurial is also a great boot, but it might take a little bit of adjusting to that new boot. So if the Ghost 2.1 was a success for you, and I like that too as well, going into the Speedflow has been like a massive step forward while giving me more of the same.
Mm-hmm. I tend to agree. I think if you really like the tooling, the sole plate on the X Ghosted, and there's really no reason to switch, go for the Speedflow. But if you are finding that you want a slightly tighter fit, maybe there's too much width for you in the X, then maybe the Mercs might be worth a shout. But I think the Speedflow is just such an awesome product.
Oh, really? Because for me, the Mercs feel slightly roomier, especially in the midfoot than the X's do. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I feel like there's less of a squeeze my foot sensation in the Speedflow than there is in the Merc.
But the forefoot's wider to me. So Mercurial is just like the same width throughout, and then obviously tightens in through the midfoot. But the midfoot in the X for me is super tight, and I have a very narrow foot. Yeah. Anyways, I just want to go on record and say that to me, the X Speedflow 0.1 is going to be those boots that I think in 5-10 years time, we're going to look back at and say that is one of the best speed boots Adidas have ever made. And obviously right now, one of the best boots for me on the market right now. It's
100%.
It is that good. And I think it's something that I'm personally going to stock up on, because this is going to be the next F50 Addy Zero Samba from 14 for me, which is it stands as a beacon of close to perfection. Because it's genuinely that good, and I have no idea how they can go up on the next X that will inevitably come, right?
I love you saying I'll probably stock up on them, as there's a wall of football boots stacked up behind you. You should definitely get some, Jay. You're going to be short some boots 10 years from now, so definitely get a couple extra pairs of spares.
Shut up.
Speedflows.
Well, yeah. Larish J. Barnett, best Tiempo Elite model ever. And I think we're talking like the best Tiempo top model ever. Most common answer among boot IG accounts are the 5s or the 9s. I'm looking to finally try a Tiempo and want to know what would be the most authentic experience of what the Tiempo offers. So you're probably going to say, like, as to every other generic boot IG account, I guess, 5s and 9s. That would probably be my guess for you.
I mean, the 9 is a great boot. I don't have a problem with that. I think the 5 it's one of my favorite boots ever. So I can agree with that. I still think the best classic Tiempo experience would be a 1 or 2. I love the Legend 1 and 2. I'd be happy to wear them now.
I just don't think they've aged out. I know what you're saying. I know exactly where you want to go with this, but to me, they've just, especially with the tooling, they just haven't aged well. For me, I actually think the 4 Elite is a lot of what the 1 and 2 gave us, but with a more modern feel that still has that solidity, that caressing your foot sensation that the 1s, 2s, 3s didn't give me that. That was shit boot. But the 1s and 2s gave us. 5, totally agree. Especially the 5, the Totties.
Yeah.
Was that the?
That was a 6.
That was a 6, yeah.
6, yeah.
Was it the 5? Those were the pillows.
Those were also 6. Oh no, Toti did have a 5. He had a 5 and a 6. So the 5 was black with the chrome tongue.
That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah, that was the 5.
Yeah,
that was the 5.
and then he had a gold one in the 6. Look, now that I'm thinking about this question, I don't know that the tiempo has had like a consistent. It hasn't had a lot of consistency. Like it's really changed quite a bit over the years. So it's really difficult for me to say what is the classic tiempo feel, because I think it's changed so much. I think the 9 has probably gone the most classic in probably since Legend 5.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you look at
5 and 6 were both. That's why I'm mixing them up all the time. To me, they feel pretty similar. 6 is a little.
I would say
modern.
6 feels very different from 5. I think 6, 7, 8 is when Nike really went this like super high tech route.
Oh yeah. I think to me 5 and 6, I like the 5 a bit more than the. Well, that's not true actually. To me, interchangeable. 7, 8 to me, too technical. But yeah, go on.
I'll say this much just for the sake of answering this question. And if you're planning on buying football boots to actually play in and hoping that they last more than 7 minutes, I think going for a Legend 9 over a Legend 5, or really anything beyond a Legend 7, would probably be your best bet. Because I don't know. I know it's a popular thing to do right now, but I personally I don't think I could justify if it's my only pair of boots and I'm spending a premium on older models, because everything is at a premium right now. I just don't think it's a great idea to go and spend $200, $250 on a pair of Legend 5s and hope they last.
No, because they won't.
Yeah. I just buy the Legend 9, and I think you'll be pretty happy with the tiempo experience on offer.
Yeah, it's an authentic tiempo experience. Let's say that much. And it's a great boot. Top Info ES. A guy from Denmark on the ball episode. A guy from Denmark saying that a Danish football is the best one. Do you think that his opinion is credible? You stupid. He didn't write that, but it's kind of implied. So Josh, I call the Select Brilliant Super US the best football that I've ever played with, and I am Danish. I might be biased. What would you say is the best football you've ever played with?
Look, purely subjective. Everyone has their preferences. There's still so many people that love the Jabulani, and I'll happily shoot a Jabulani, but play a game with it, it's my nightmare. I just don't like it. It's not fun. But if you want that classic football experience, I think Select does it better than everybody else.
Okay.
32 panels. It's just, I would argue, and I've made videos on this before, every other sport has a standardized piece of equipment that is the thing that you need to play the sport in the first place. In the case of football, it is, as the name would suggest, the football. Why is there so much variation from league to tournament to brand? I think it should be standardized, and if it were to be standardized, I think they should base it off of something that Select makes.
Yes. So it's not just, I'm not... What do you call it? Incredible? Uncredible? I'm definitely incredible, but am I undiscredible?
I've never revealed this, but I'm 1/64th Danish.
Ooh, so we are actually super non-credible.
We're both
Whatever you
biased
call
here.
the opposite of credible, we're that. We're super biased. Let's disregard the fact that every other person who's ever played with the Select ball loves it, give or take. Anyways, there's a guy called Waylon Ulrich. I remember seeing a guy wearing a pair of Nike anticlock boots on AG pitches once. I couldn't believe my eyes. That sounds about like the most insane thing anyone could ever do. Do you remember back when Ronaldo, he played for Real Madrid in Russia, wore, I think Vapor 9's SG Pros? And I was like, what? Didn't anyone tell him that it was a super bad idea? Apparently not. Don't wear SG boots on AG pitches, guys.
I've never understood that. That's something that I feel like they pay all this money in salary. You would think they have at least the equipment manager who's paying attention and like trying to protect some of these guys from playing with these lethal stud patterns and or with their shoes untied. Like I understand there's a comfort aspect of football boots, but there's certain things that certain guys do that it's like, you're a professional. You're a professional athlete.
Someone should
tie
tell
your
him.
damn shoes.
His Nike rep should tell him, yo, Do not do this. Here's a pair of Vapor 9 AGs. Please wear them.
I don't get it.
There's Adam Harris, would you recommend the laced or laceless version of the Speedflow for AG? You will get way more response from the laced version because the stop pattern isn't as aggressive, question mark. Yes. What? Wait, what?
Recommend the laced or laceless version.
I would totally
for
go.
AG.
So what happens if you have the laceless version? When you plant your foot, there will be a little bit of movement inside of the laceless version. So you know, you want the laced one because the more you can lock your foot down and fixate it, the less you will move once your foot gets stuck in the ground. And it will stick a little bit more in an AG ground. So the boot won't move. Your foot will move a little bit. So the more lockdown you can get from the laces, that's what you want. It was a long answer, but yes, laces.
Yeah. And look, you should also just watch some videos comparing the two and kind of pick the one you like. I don't think you're going to suffer an injury based on your choice of these two football
As long
boots.
as you go at the AG stop pattern, you're good.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Ian or Ian? That's an O. Ion Sandman. That's a cool name. Hello, Josh and Jay. I need help with what turf boots to buy since we're told to wear turf instead of AG for injury prevention. So someone at your club actually has a brain. Great. I mean, AG still safe, but you know, turf safer.
Sure.
What would you say? Puma Future Set 1.2 MGs?
Yeah. I don't see why that would be an excellent option if you can get away with the MG boots. I think the Speedflow 0.1 turf boot is pretty solid for what it costs. You get at least the very same upper that's on the top end model.
There's also the Mundial team.
That would be my pick. Yeah, I love the Mundial team, but that's also very much by today's standards, I think, an acquired taste because it is a chunky kind of heavy football boot.
It's great.
But
if you're playing on gravel and all that sorts, I mean, that's a nigh indestructible.
And that is, if you're talking about the best turf outsole from a performance standpoint, Mundial team it beats everything. I don't care what anyone says.
I totally agree. And we have, I am so blind, man. What does that say? It says, why always me 11? I don't know. You ask me. You tell me. English. What did Jay go home? It's been a long day. I still feel that the Copa Mundial is an excellent FG AG boot. How important is the hollow aspect of the stud? And I understand why you would say that it's a solid AG boot because, you know, FG boots with conical studs will tend to be less of a risk than wearing bladed studs on AG. But the hollow stud aspect means that, you know, because they're hollow, they generate less heat and the studs tend to cool down a little bit more, meaning that the abrasion from the friction you get because of the heat on the studs will be a little bit less. So if you can, get AG boots. Also because of warranty. But, you know, they're not the worst. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I don't think a Copa Mundial is unsafe to play on AG. Once upon a time, when AG boots were not accessible, this is pre-SR4U, I want to say, I actually got a pair of Copa Mundials specifically to play on AG because I couldn't get anything else.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, in other words, unisportstore.com if you live in North America, because we ship worldwide. We have a lot of AG boots. Shameless plug. With those words, Josh, that was today's episode of the Boot Nerds podcast. Top 5 Predator boots ever. You're probably mad by now. So leave us your personal thoughts on the top 5 best Predators in the comment section right down below. You can also leave your questions right down there. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the Boot Nerds podcast yet, I have no idea what you're on about, but you can do so by clicking on the white bubble in the middle of the screen right now. You can also go and follow what we're up to on our separate other channels, SR4U and Unisport. And don't be a stranger for next week's episode. We're going to be back with those words. I've been JayMike and I approve this message. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.